Hey, everybody, it's Ryan. Thanks for downloading today's show. And just a reminder, as always, Wake Up War Chant is brought to you by our friends at For the Table, Madison Social, Central and Township, in the heart of College Town. Ladies and gentlemen, from Tallahassee to Thomasville and from coast to Atlantic coast, it's time to Wake Up War Chant here on 97.9 ESPN Radio, and it is a very happy Thursday morning, December the 7th, to you and yours. You're currently listening to the voice of Ryan Kelly. I'm the director of digital media at warchant.com. Drew Hicken, as always, sits on the other side of the glass, pushing the buttons, making things work. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm just fine. I'm swell. I'm tired, and I will full disclosure this one for you. This is a record the night before. We are at the studio at probably about 10:45. Ira Schoffel is going to join us here, do his interview like we usually do it late at night, because I'm really tired. And I'm sure many of you who haven't even worked in this situation are really tired after the last 2 weeks. But you know what? Today was a day that made it worth it. Wednesday, December the 6th, could be, and I'm not going to tell you it's a day that changes the program and all. At the end of the day, you got to win football games. But this is a day I won't forget anytime soon. And I say that in both sides of my brain. I say that into two sides I compartmentalize myself. The side that is a member of the media and the side that has a diploma from the Florida State University hanging on my wall. But, you know, we'll get to all that in a second. Thanks so much for waking up with us here, 6 a.m., 97.9 ESPN Radio. Of course, streaming over the web, WTSM app, TuneIn radio app. They're both there. ESPNTallahassee.com is where we're live and streaming over the airwaves. Radio at warchant.com is the email, at Wake Up Warchant is the Twitter account. And as always, our show can't go without our friends at For the Table, Madison Social, Central and Township. That's all in College Town. And the Sodo Banking Company right there in Midtown. Why don't you go out and grab yourself some Happy Donuts today? That's a great thing to do this morning. I will most certainly say that, because we'll get to Willie Taggart as far as what he said. As a matter of fact, in the next segment that you're going to hear after this one, you're going to hear Willie Taggart's thoughts on all this stuff, some of the stuff that's played out. But let me just say this, and I say this just as if you take, you know, where I went to school, if you take all that out of it, yesterday was a really cool day. That press conference at 11 a.m. was cool because you couldn't help but feel happy for a guy who got what he wanted, and he did it by being nice and working hard. And it's not often you get to see things like that. It's not often that you get to see stories work out this way. Does it have a happy ending? I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. I think he's going to be a good coach. I think just about everybody feels that way right now. But to see that guy, Willie Taggart, take that stage, go off that stage to hug his mom, come back grinning ear to ear, smiling throughout the day, to see him at the Tucker Center last night, smiling, doing the war chant. Willie Taggart did the war chant more in his first day as Florida State head coach than Jimbo Fisher did in 10 years at the university. And just to see a guy that's that happy to be here, and to see a guy that's that happy to have this job, I think it's absolutely infectious. And you saw it in the way that social media reacted, and you saw it in the way that the fans reacted in that basketball game. I said it earlier this week, Florida State's a proud university. It's a proud institution. It's a proud program. And it's certainly a proud athletic department. And Florida State doesn't need a lot of days where it needs to be told it's pretty. Florida State knows it's pretty. It knows it's the hot girl at the party. But there are certain days and certain occasions where even the hottest girl at the party needs to be told she's pretty, especially after what happened on Friday. But Saturday happened. Heck, to an extent, Monday with the basketball team happened. And then yesterday happened. Florida State got a nice ego boost and a nice shot in the arm. And they got to celebrate a guy whose dream came true yesterday. And I know that's cheesy, and I know that's cliche, But in being in that room, and I think anybody would tell you that, if they're as objective of a reporter as possible, if they're an alumnus and a booster who's completely in the tank for this guy, that seemed like a man whose dream came true yesterday, and you couldn't help but feel happy for him.
Man, it's just refreshing. It's just a breath of fresh air to have a guy who actually wants to be here, and you know that if he succeeds, he will be here for the long haul. There is absolutely zero doubt in my mind.
$75 million guaranteed over 10 years? Yeah. No guarantee in my mind? Or no doubt in my mind?
I guess that's fair. But, barring some crazy, stupid contract, and yes, I said stupid, Taggart, I mean, you said it. He's ecstatic to be here. I mean, he could not be more excited. And you saw the players reacting on social media, talking about how the energy is just different. Man, I can tell you that I've never been anywhere near as a football player. I had no business ever playing football at a place like Florida State, and you could just be driving around Tallahassee, and you can feel the energy in this city from that guy coming in here. I mean, people are just we're just excited. I mean, I don't remember a time where Tallahassee's been so pumped up outside of maybe when we win the national title.
It was a 2013.
It was pretty wild. I mean, there were some cars on fire and whatnot. It got a little crazy.
And I think it took a changing of the guard, Drew, to really kind of understand just how strange the air had gotten over Tallahassee over the last couple of years. It took bringing a new guy in who's full of enthusiasm, and once again, you can tell, wants to be here, first and foremost, and not just wants to be here, left an excellent job and left an excellent situation and had to mull it over long and hard if he was going to leave people who were very, very good to him. Many of you probably heard it by now, but in the next segment, we're going to play you that clip of how he talked about his process with Oregon. You could tell it was a tough choice, but at the end of the day, this was his dream job. And the thing is, people say that all the time in press conferences. I get that. But not everybody says that after they leave Oregon. Not everybody does that. This is this dude's dream job. To be back with his family, to be back at the school he grew up watching. You can't help but feel not just ecstatic for the school, but for that guy.
We've already done probably far too many, women metaphors here, but to be honest with you, it just feels like Florida State is that girl who let the guy come back time and time again. And they always say, when a girl makes up her mind that she's not getting back with the guy, it's really actually over this time. I don't think there's anybody who would take Jimbo Fisher back over Willie Taggart right now. Just the way that he's come in here.
And that's partially the honeymoon too.
Let's but I mean, this is fresh. This is a strictly reactionary right now. We're talking the day after the presser. I'm just saying, this point in time, I really don't think there's a person that would say, you know what, if Jimbo could come back right now, and I don't think there's a lot of people who would be cool with it. I think most people would be, all aboard the T train.
Well, I think what's interesting about this is you can say all the nice things and you can smile as much as you want all you want.
Means nothing unless you win.
It means absolutely nothing.
How many I mean, listen, even just how many Florida head coaches have we seen go win the opening presser to do nothing?
Drew, if winning the opening presser was what determined a great NFL head coach,
they'd all be great.
Bill Belichick would be the worst head coach of all time, and Gus Bradley would be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's how this works. Of course, if you don't win the opening press conference, there's big trouble. A big, big, big trouble. Just about everybody wins the opening press. The only time that I can ever think, as far as a fan, that I've seen a coach not win the opening press conference was, remember how brutal Mike Mularkey's press conference was when he made it to Jacksonville? That was rough.
I was never that hyped up about Mike Mularkey,
exactly.
So I probably didn't watch it.
And the thing is, everybody's hyped up about new blood and new things coming in. Unless it's just really bad. Ask Tennessee fans about that. By the way, looks like Tennessee fans have found their coach, and we'll talk about that in a second when we catch you up while you were sleeping. But anybody can do that. Anybody can go in. I don't think anybody can sound as sincere and as happy as he did, but anybody can win the press conference. It just so happens that he hit it out of the park. Yeah. It's another thing altogether to make sure that you win. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and play that clip for you right now. Let's go ahead to that. At the end of the day, when it came to talking about fixing FSU.
It's different for me because this is not a rebuild. This is more of a realignment. If anything, we got to realign some things and to get it going again. But it's exciting knowing that you have some really good football players in here, and I'm excited about the challenges that are in front of us and bringing a group of people together for the same common cause, which is to win championship. And I'm excited about doing that.
Right off the bat, winning championships. Goes on later on in the presser to say, we can't be on the outside looking in the ACC anymore.
I mean, he grew up a Florida State fan. He knows the expectations here. He said it at least 5-6 times today about how he won't let you down. We're ACC. We can't be looking outside ACC. Can't look outside of the playoff. And you know what? Somebody make a shirt. Somebody do something. Lethal simplicity is the sickest phrase I've ever heard when someone describing an offense.
You'll hear that phrase a little bit later, but he even doubled down on that comment at the Tucker Center last night when he was interviewed by our old buddy Aria Masudi doing ACC Network Extra stuff on Watch ESPN. Aria asked this question.
And then my last question for you is, what are some of your immediate goals for Florida State in the short term?
Win.
You can say maybe he's setting himself up a little bit too much, but at the same time, he's not shying away from the expectations. He knows what they are. He knows what comes with the weight of a Florida State. And he also knows what comes with the weight as we've discussed before all throughout this week. This is the first time he's taken a job where he's going to be expected to succeed right out of the gate. It's not a rebuild like Oregon was or South Florida or Western Kentucky. The players and the pieces are there. It's not a rebuild. It's a realign. He said it himself. And he knows that the expectations are high right out of the gate.
I mean, he knows that if he comes in here and goes 8-4, 9-3 next year, there's people who are going to be upset, even though it's his first year. There are people who will be pissed. And like I said, growing up a Noles fan, his entire family is Florida State fans. You know that he knows that this is the expectation here. And I think, we always people were talking about how Dan Mullen understands what it's like to win and what it takes to win in Gainesville. Willie Taggart understands what it means to Florida State fans and the expectations. And he is the perfect fit for Florida State right now. He gets it. He is the guy. Now, we'll see if it works out because, again, you got to win football games, and we'll see how we actually look on the field. But, I mean, look, I right now I feel pretty good about the guy.
It's one heck of a honeymoon, and it kind of makes you wish that you got this season as a do-over with this guy on the sideline because you'd love to see what this team could do. Anyway, a couple interesting things happened in the world of college football and basketball last night, including a huge upset just a little down the road. Let's get you caught up. It's while you were sleeping.
Hello. Good morning. Wake up. Wake up. Wake me up. Good morning. Good morning.
What happened last night?
Let's start with college football, where Bruce Feldman of Sports Illustrated is reporting that Tennessee is nearing a deal to make Alabama defensive coordinator Jeremy Pruitt the next head coach of the Volunteers. Listen, you can say what you want about the Schiano nonsense, and we're Volunteer fans right to push him the way they did. They ended up with a better guy.
Yeah, he's risky, but I think he's got a he's got a high ceiling. He's got a high ceiling, and to be honest with you, if you're Tennessee, you got to be ecstatic with getting a guy like Jeremy Pruitt at this point in the process.
I don't know how much time we're going to have to talk about the Hoops team, so I will mention this. 96-71 over Loyola, Maryland. Pretty impressive performance from C.J. Walker, who was just unconscious at this point. There were times where Florida State kind of seemed like they sleepwalked in this game. But that's to be expected after a big emotional win against Florida. Coming off a big emotional loss is the Gators, by the way. And it didn't go as well for them. 65-59, the final score for Loyola Chicago. Live by the 3, die by the 3. And, well, that's a pretty nasty one if you're going to take that in Gainesville. However, Loyola, Illinois, Loyola Chicago, they are 9-1. They haven't really beat anybody of note till they beat the Gators, but 9-1 is 9-1. And that being said, we move on to another big upset. What the heck has happened to Georgia Tech? I know they've got a couple injuries, but Brian Pastore was picking that team so much better. They lost to Wofford last night, 63-60. That'll hurt your feelings. Good Lord. Hey, when we come back, we're going to hear a little bit more from the man himself, Willie Taggart. And then later on in the show, we're going to get Ira Schoffel's thoughts on the whole situation. So stick around. It's Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. All right, so enough talk from us. We'll get into Willie Taggart chatter in a second. But first of all, best happy hour in town, 4 to 7. It's going down tonight at 4 the Table, Madison Social, Central, and Township. 3 different places, 3 different experiences, one great deal. Make sure you're taking a part in that. Willie Taggart took the stage yesterday. I'm sure many of you have probably already heard some of his comments, but I did want to cherry pick some of the best stuff that's going on out there. And we'll take it a piece by piece. We'll take it a little bit at a time. And I wanted to start with Oregon and that situation, because right off the bat, that more than anything he said about Florida State, what he said about Oregon, I took away the most. Here's what he had to say when he was asked about that situation and leaving what was a really, really good job.
It was tough because what you just said, only been there for a year. Things were going really well there. I mean, in every aspect, it's going well. The people you met and the relationship you built, it's always tough when you have to end that, you know. I mean, just think about it, being able to meet Phil Knight. I mean, he's an icon, and I was in awe when I had a chance to meet him. You know, like, wow, and he's a great person and have a great mind and really smart, but he really loved the University of Oregon. Rob Mullins, who I thought was an awesome AD and was great to work for, and for him to give me an opportunity, my first opportunity to coach in the Power 5, you feel back or you feel like you let him down, and I know I did, but and like I told him, I'm sorry that I did let him down. Like I told everyone there, I'm sorry, I apologize. The timing is probably not right, but it's never right when it's time to leave. And but again, like I said, talking with my son made me realize a lot, and I can let. I guess my biggest problem, I'm always worried about other folks and making other folks happy. And this one time where I get a chance to fulfill my dreams, I couldn't just rely on that. And again, it's just a perfect situation. I wasn't going to leave it just for anything, you know, because it was perfect and my family loved it there and had everything going the right way. But to be closer to your family and still have an opportunity to coach in the Power 5 and still have an opportunity to win a national championship, which is a personal goal, it was tough to overcome. And again, don't always work the way that you want it to, but it is what it is. And again, I know they'll find a great coach there, and they have great players there, and they'll do a great job there.
Now, Mullins made some remarks to the press a couple days ago, and he was rather upset, you could tell, about the way Willie Taggart left, and there's still some hurt feelings between some recruits and some players, and I completely understand that. But in terms of how you deal with that publicly and how you deal with this situation, you take notes from that. You take away, that's how you do that. What Scott Frost did after the American Championship on Saturday, that's how you do that. How is it that both of those guys were able to nail it and a guy who'd been at a school 8 years wasn't able to?
And I want to say one thing, because I know that a lot of Oregon fans and even some of the players are calling for a guy like Cristobal to get that job. And I know it sounds kind of biased because I know we kind of want Cristobal. But it'd be kind of, in my opinion, for Oregon to go after another Florida guy, you're setting yourself up for disaster there, because really no one's going to leave Oregon if they're a West Coast kind of guy. But if you hire another Florida guy, I'm going to give you a little spoiler alert. If you hire Cristobal and for whatever reason that Miami job comes open and he's doing well, Cristobal will leave for Miami, and you'll be sitting there on your hands again.
But I think he handled it very well. He handled it gracefully. Scott Frost handled it gracefully. And, you know, if the other guy throughout this process has handled it gracefully. Maybe University President John Thrasher wouldn't have ended up making a statement like this before he introduced head coach Willie Taggart.
You know, some people would say after what Stan said about Coach, this being his dream job, I kind of think like he told me it was kind of like a no-brainer to come to Florida State.
I love that the room, that clip goes on. I wish we'd have actually cut that maybe more, a little bit longer, because the room kind of dies. The laughter kind of dies. Like there's just an initial, like, he obviously wants us to laugh. And then I think the room kind of realizes what he did there. And they went, oh, okay then.
Thrasher, my man, I know you're probably not listening, but
that's
well done, sir.
That's some grade A shade. That's
well done. I was pumped up for that entire presser, but that was incredible. I was so happy that Thrasher did that. Say whatever you want. I don't care. That was awesome.
But hey, enough of that stuff. You got to talk about X and O's. We talked about it off the top of the show. Winning football games is how you go beyond winning a press conference. And Florida State's got a chance to do it, and they've got a chance to do it with talent that can get on the field sooner. Willie Taggart certainly stressed that when he talked about the Gulf Coast offense, and he talked about the defense as well. But first, let's talk about the Gulf Coast offense.
Joey, you know about the Gulf Coast offense. How would I describe it? Lethal simplicity. Lethal simplicity. You know, we want to score fast and often, but be really simple when it comes to teaching our players and not confusing them on what they need to do, but allow our guys to go out and just play football and play fast and score a touchdown. We all like touchdowns, and I really like explosive plays. You see a lot of explosive plays, and we like those. I'm not one of those guys, unless it's the 4-minute situation, that we like those long drives. Okay, I like to score fast. So as long as we can score fast and often, it's a good thing, and we take pride in doing that.
He had some pretty similar sentiments about what he wanted from his defense, and he also had some pretty fun words to say along as well.
Defensively, same thing. Lethal simplicity. Again, not a complicated guy. I want to keep it simple, but want to be aggressive on the defense side of the ball. Have I decided that we want to run a 4-3 or 3-4? No, I haven't decided that. I want to, excuse my language, but I want a damn good defense. You know, I want our defense to be back to where Florida State defense has been in the past. You know, excuse my language, but we was a bunch of badasses back in the days. We were some war daddies. You know, people fear. You think about Derek Brooks, Peter Boulware, those type of guys, man. We want to get back to those days. And you got to get guys that feel the same way. You got to recruit guys that want to be that way. You know, we want to be physical. We want to be fast. We want to be in attack mode at all times and making plays, you know. But it's got to be that way, and you got to have that personality as a defensive coach that coaches that way. And but we want to do it all in the right way. So that's what I'm looking for in our defense, and making sure we have a D coordinator that understands that and passionate about doing that, and gonna make sure you hold everyone accountable on that side of the ball to be in that way.
It's refreshing to know that a guy knows that he's got superior athletes in most situations. And if you're aggressive, but you're not stupid, and you're simple enough when you need to be simple, not everything has to be complicated, you can win games more often than not.
And let me just say this, 2 things. First thing, go into a recruit's room and ask him if he wants to be a war daddy. They're all going to love it. I don't know what a war daddy is, but man, that's a fun word. I mean, Willie just crushed it today. And the other
thing,
thing,
made to be hashtagged, by the way.
Yeah, it was. And the other thing with the Gulf Coast offense, you know what that reminds me of is it's literally before any of this had even happened. A couple of weeks ago, I saw a quote from Taggart saying how he iced the Oregon State kicker up 50-something points, and they asked him why he did it, and he said, "Well, here's the deal: if you pump me the ball and I'm beating the crap out of you, you know what? I'll kneel. But if you try to score on me, I'm going to try to score on you. I don't care what the score is." And I love that. I mean, even more than I love I'm recruiting guys to come take your job. That's my job. It's your job to keep it. God, I mean, he's just, talk about a quote machine. The dude's awesome.
Speaking of recruiting, he also brought that up as well when you look at all of this stuff. His philosophy when it comes to going out and finding guys.
Speaking of recruiting, there's an early signing day on December 20th through the 22nd. It's around the corner. So, like I said, there's a lot of work to be done in a short amount of time. And I plan on tonight to get out and get to working and try to salvage this recruiting class. And, again, I know growing up, guys want to be a no, and so I know there's a lot of no's out there that want to be here, and we're going to go out and find them and find the right guys that's going to come here and do the right things. And we're going to hold each and every last one of those young men accountable to doing the things that they say they were going to do when they came here, and that's being the best football player they can be, being the best student they can be, and having the best character that they can have. That's what we're going to judge our guys on. You got to have two of those three things in order to be on our football team. Okay, you can't have one and be on our football team. If you have two, we'll work with you with whatever you're struggling with to get you up to par. But you got to have great character, be a great football player, you be the best that you can be in the classroom. Okay, and that's what we're looking for here. And I think if we're doing those things, winning will take care of itself. Winning championship will take care of itself because we'll be doing those things, and that just will be a part of our life. So looking forward to finding a young man like that to come in here and being a part of this great university.
Everybody says they want guys who are good in the classroom and high character. I do think it's something that he is going to stress, and I do think it's something that he's going to build on. It seems like that's his type of deal. It's the idea that to build a good culture, you got to have good guys and you got to have good players, and obviously you got to have the grades to keep them on the field. It all kind of works out in that way. But the thing is, this is a guy who's been extremely successful at recruiting just about every single place he's went. It's worth noting Marvin Wilson, who was one of the best recruits in the country, who ended up signing on the dotted line with Florida State, took an official visit to South Florida last go around in this recruiting class. And let's face it, nobody really thought he was going to South Florida, but he wanted to see Willie. And I think that speaks volumes about the type of guy he is and who he wants to be and what he wants his program to be. He's a guy you want to play for. And you can tell when he says stuff like this, and it's an enthusiasm, but it's a quiet enthusiasm. There's not a ton of rah-rah to it, but it just makes you kind of excited. And so with all that being said, having a guy that wants to be here is such a big deal. And the fact that he had to still sweat out whether he was going to take this job or not, that's why I saved this clip for last. This is Willie Taggart talking about his son, talking about what ended up making him make the decision to the University of Oregon, to Florida State University. I love this. This is a very rare human side to somebody at a press conference that you get to see. This is good stuff. Check it out.
When it really came to me that it was probably something I needed to do, I had a profound moment in my life as a father. Excuse me if I get a little emotional. But my wife and I was sitting there and talking about this decision. And my 16-year-old son came in and out of nowhere, and I didn't expect this, but he said, Dad, I know you're struggling with this decision, and I know this is your dream job. And he said, you always tell me to chase my dreams and don't let anyone get in the way of it. And he said, I don't think it's right for me or anyone else to stop you from chasing your dreams. And he said, and I don't want to lead that, but if you're going to chase your dream, then I'm going to ride with you. And that meant a lot to me. It was like me talking to him. It was like he was my father talking to me. And but it was also gratifying, and I was so proud of him, just how he articulated those things to me, and just, again, made me follow my own advice that I gave him.
Cool moment. It's nice to see something human like that, and it is nice to know that he struggled with that decision. It is nice to know that those kids in Oregon and all that made that much of an impact on a guy, that he's not a mercenary for hire, that he's not just a guy looking out for a paycheck, that even though his dream was right in front of him, he still had to make a hard choice. And I think that story is really, really cool, and hopefully, it's a peek into the guy that he actually is. Our own Ira Schoffel has some thoughts on what we learned about Willie Taggart as well. We'll talk to him about those right after this. Is Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Shorty get down, good Lord. Baby got 'em open all over town. Strictly bitch, you don't play around. Cover much grounds, got game by the pound.
Darn pop-ups and video ads.
Are you wasting your time again on clickbait FSU updates that are bloated down with ads?
Yeah. And after crashing my computer, the information isn't even up to date. You're on warchant.com. What's really going on with the Seminoles?
For the real scoop, you'll need to get your own War Chant subscription.
What's it cost?
Free. There's a 30-day trial offer right now.
You know I like free. Sign me up.
Use the promo code WARCHANT30. That's WARCHANT30. Nobody has more accurate and timely information on the Noles than warchant.com.
Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole source.
Wake Up War Chant 97.9 ESPN Radio, brought to you by your friends at For the Table. Day 2 of the Willie Taggart era at Florida State. Our own Ira Schoffel has been doing his homework on Mr. Willie Taggart. He has a nice little article out today about the 15 facts you need to know about Willie Taggart. And he also had another pretty interesting piece out this week that I think we're right to discuss a little bit here. So without further ado, let's bring on the managing editor of warchant.com, Mr. Ira Schoffel. Ira, how are you, my friend?
Good, Ryan. How are you?
I'm just fine, and I think it's funny that yesterday we talked about Florida State football under Willie Taggart seems like it's going to be fun again, and I didn't even know because there's just been so much going on. You put up a column on the site that was very, very similar, Ira, and it's the idea that this guy just kind of oozes fun. He oozes charisma, and I think Florida State kind of needs that shot in the arm on and off the field.
Yeah, I think, look, I think sometimes, a lot of times when you have a coach in place for a while, you kind of, and then things don't end well, I think you want something different. You want a different flavor. You focus on the things that you maybe didn't like about that previous coach. And I think one of the, complaints a lot of people had about Jimbo, especially towards the end, was that it just felt like there wasn't a lot of fun to Florida State football. The games were often low scoring. The offense really struggled to score. And this is even before DeAndre Francois got hurt. This goes back, the last couple of years as well, where the offense just felt like it was always plodding. It never really, there weren't a lot of exciting plays. There weren't a lot of big plays. The defense wasn't making a lot of big plays. It just seemed like, they would play and when they won, but it just seemed like there wasn't a lot of excitement. There was, and especially when you see some of the things going on in college football with the turnover chain and different things other teams are doing. So I just feel like bringing in somebody who's going to bring in fresh ideas, new ideas, maybe be a little bit more aggressive offensively and defensively, knowing that might lead to some more mistakes. If you're going to go for high reward plays, you're probably going to have some more mistakes, but you'd like to think if you've got better athletes, it's going to pay off. So I just think that's kind of the mindset a lot of people are in right now, is they want to see something fresh and new and exciting. And Willie, at his press conference, seemed to really kind of make that promise that that's the style of football he's going to bring.
And, of the promises he made, Ira, one of the things that really impressed me, and we talked about it right before we went to break, his idea that he knows this is the first time he's in a program where I don't want to say a turnkey program, but, he's got to readjust a couple things or realign it, as he said. And this is a place that can win a lot of football games, and it certainly seems like he gets that expectation.
Yeah, that's got to be exciting. And, a lot of people, when they first heard Willie Taggart's name and the fact that he was up for the job, and they look at his overall record and you say, oh, it's not really all that impressive. It's around 500. But then when you look at, the programs he went to, where they were at when he went there, and the way he turned them around within, 2 or 3 years, for the most part, it gives you excitement to think of what if he didn't have to rebuild it. When he went to USF, they were a wreck, and it took him a couple of years to kind of get it going. When he went to Western Kentucky, they had been a wreck. So, I think this is something new for him. And he said this is the first time he's really taken a job where he'll step in and he's going to have better athletes than most teams they played. I mean, Florida State's recruited an incredibly high level. Look at what these freshmen did this year. Cam Akers and Stanford Samuels and Hamza Nasruddin and, DJ Matthews, on and on and on. There's a ton of young talent on this team. And I think he's excited to have something to work with. He doesn't have to start from scratch.
Of your 15 things you learned from the intro press conference, Ira, I loved that you said that he's a Kiss fan. And obviously not talking about Gene Simmons and company, but keep it simple, stupid. And, of course, that's always been a phrase thrown around in many corners of the business world. And the way he talks about his offense, the way he talks about his defense, you're right. He's got better athletes than most of the teams he's going to face. And he's got that right out the get-go before he even goes and recruits. And, of course, we'll touch on that in a second. But the idea that you don't always need to be over and out thinking yourself. The idea that sometimes going into a game, cutting off a couple explosive plays and out-athleting a team is enough. You don't have to overwork yourself in every situation.
Yeah, and again, and I feel, it's probably going to be a while where everything we talk about with Willie Taggart, we're going to compare it to Jimbo. But, it is what it is. But, I felt like one of the things that a lot of people brought up about Jimbo, certainly towards the end, but even back in the beginning before Jameis, I remember writing columns about this, that it just felt like the offense, everything had to work perfectly for the offense to work. They had to, there's so many things, there were so many reads by the receivers and so many decisions had to be made by the quarterback before the snap, and running backs are having to make decisions about who they block based on what the offensive linemen are doing. And it was like this complex puzzle, which is great. If it all works. And, the problem is it didn't always work. And, you have these great athletes who sometimes aren't being utilized. I think when Willie Taggart said, I'm going to, I don't want my star players to have to think too much. I want them to just go play football and have fun. I think that really resonated with FSU fans who look at guys like Keith Gavin, who only touched the ball one time his freshman year, or DJ Matthews, who didn't really start playing until late in his freshman year, or some of the other guys who didn't really play at all in their freshman year. So I think the idea of something simpler where your best athletes can do what they do, I really think is going to appeal to FSU fans.
Ira, we talked about another thing off the top of the show. You could be a big-time booster in the tank for Florida State, as many folks can be at an intro press. I always say an intro press conference is about the only press conference where you're going to hear a ton of cheering. But you could have been that. You could have been the most hardened, impartial journalist in the room, and it was impossible not to feel happy for that guy today. You said it right off the bat in your article. This is a guy who's a true Seminole through and through. And, it's not just any job that I think somebody would take to leave the situation at Oregon, where you've basically got a blank check to do whatever. You have what is right now an infinitely winnable Pac-12 because of all the parity and the fact that there really isn't a dominant team. It's a rebuild, sure, but it's got a lot to offer. It was going to have to be a very, very special job. And for him, I think to leave a situation like that to come to Florida State, I think it does validate some of this talk that it is his dream job.
Yeah, and like you said, just to hear him talk about, when he walked out onto the 50-yard line and just kind of looked up and just kind of threw his hands up in the air like like he couldn't believe it. And just think about it. You think about yourself or when you were a fan of a team when you were young, and and he talked about how coming out of Manatee High School in Bradenton, he was a star athlete, and I think he was he came in after Tommy Frazier and had a star-studded career in high school, won state titles, and wanted to go to Florida State, but they didn't really recruit him. So he goes to Western Kentucky, and at that point, he's still an FSU fan, but just figures, it just never happened. I'll never get the chance to go to FSU or play at FSU. And then here it is 20 years later, and now he's the head coach of Florida State University. You do pull for a guy like that, especially, FSU fans who they always appreciated the fact that Jimbo knew the history of Florida State football. He had been around it. He was a friend of the Bowdens, so he saw the program. But I don't know if Jimbo had that fan part of him that other fans can relate to. I don't think Jimbo was he grew up in West Virginia. He wasn't a diehard fan in his formative years. He got to know them later when he got to be tight with Terry Bowden. And that's not the case. Willie Taggart grew up diehard Florida State, and I think that's, again, one more thing that I think is going to connect with fans.
Ira, there's, of course, plenty more pieces to what you put out in this story. It's great stuff, and I really do mean that, my friend. And if you have time today, warchant.com, make sure you check out Ira's story. But, Ira, before I let you go, I have to ask you, the one thing that you didn't think you would learn today about Willie Taggart or about this press conference, the one thing that you didn't expect today that happened was?
Probably him talking about Florida State's defenses of the past. Again, I think that, he's an offensive guy. He played quarterback. But to hear him talk about those Florida State defenses, and he called them badasses and just really, how much he enjoyed and appreciated those defenses and how he wants that back. That's what he wants as a cornerstone of his program. I didn't think he talked much about defense, and I think he sent the right message because, again, FSU's got a ton of talent on defense right now, but over the last several years, really since 2013, FSU's defense has not really inflicted big hits. They haven't created big turnovers. They haven't made a ton of big plays. And, that's the vision he has for that defense.
Ira, I don't know what the hell a war daddy is, but
exactly.
But he makes it sound really cool. He has a way of doing that. So anyway, it's Ira, the 15 things you learned from Willie Taggart's introductory press conference. It's on warchant.com right now. It's a great piece of work from our friend, Mr. Ira Schoffel, who was kind enough to join us today. Ira, thanks so much, my friend.
Thanks, Ryan. Take care.
Hey, we're putting a ball on this thing right after this, ladies and gents. It's Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Put a bow on the time. I Wake Up War Chant 97.9 ESPN Radio. Getting ready to close up shop here in the morning. But before we do, interested to see a guy who has not said a lot about this Florida State program over the years, or at least over the last 8 years, be so well into the fold this time around. That's Deion Sanders, who said a lot of nice things about Willie Taggart yesterday, and I think in doing so kind of let his thoughts about the previous administration be known.
I didn't know Deion was so against Jimbo. I mean, he's made that very clear. He said I was never really with that last hire, and he said I'm coming back. I fully support this regime and this and that. I was surprised, but very, very happy because honestly, he really has been. He's been absent.
And I think it's also the idea, Deion's one of those former players that I think whoever succeeded Coach Bowden, especially since it was someone on his staff and it was the in-waiting situation, was never going to feel comfortable with it. There were just that certain pocket of players that always thought, well, you're just pushing Bobby out. And of course, we know to an extent that's true and to an extent that's not true. To an extent, Florida State needed to move on. And unfortunately, that meant having to make that decision. But the situation's a lot clearer now, and I'd say there's a pretty rosy honeymoon for Coach Willie Taggart, and it's hard not to when he had a presser like that. But now he's got to go recruit. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Hey, Gullah Can We Go's up next, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
WarChant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. WarChant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WarChant30. WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.